Hello, my dear listeners. This is your favorite podcast host, Charlie, from June of 2025. If you're hearing one of these episode toppers, it means this episode is no longer totally current in some way. Now, this may be obvious to you if you've scrolled deep into our episode archive of all these past dates, but just in case it was not, please receive this content warning that what you're about to listen to is not completely current. In an effort to avoid confusion over the general state of the landscape, but still try to maintain some of the transparency of the project that this podcast has been, as well as I think some of that valuable process based information that's present in all of our episodes, I've decided just to leave all of our older episodes up, even if the landscape has shifted significantly since the recording occurred. So when we become aware of a big change, I'm just adding a topper to the episode like this to make clear what is current as of now in the middle of 2025. Of course, now, as soon as I release these episode toppers into the ether, my information becomes immediately not current, so we appreciate your grace there. And we also can't commit to catching every single small shift in the landscape that may happen when you're talking about over 200 episodes so far, but we're gonna do our best. And we'll certainly be able to catch all the major shifts in hopefully a reasonable amount of time. At least that will be our goal. And I will just say in general, I'm saying this at the top of all of the episodes to make it clear that this is not about a specific person or program, nor the specific episode that you're about to listen to. But just in general, one faculty member does not make an entire program, in our opinion, right? Obviously, there are some program heads and really valued professors that have had those outsized impacts on their programs and have built reputations with their strong hands, but nobody does that alone. And the legacy of that work that doesn't disappear with a person's leaving, right? So while someone leaving a program that might really shift your opinion on the school, and it's fair to allow it to, it shouldn't completely invalidate that school in your mind, certainly not automatically, right? Both factors, the specific faculty and the institution itself around them, should weigh heavily in your mind. And each situation, it's going to be unique about how much influence you think a shift might have, right? There are no easy answers, but each situation should be weighed individually based on those variety of factors. So it was my goal with this podcast to give you that intimate look into a given program so that you could pick up the vibes of specific professors, hopefully better than you're able to read data off a website. But hopefully to some extent, you're able to extrapolate that vibe as best as you can to the program at large, right? Of course, not every professor is going to be fully representative of every other professor at the program. How could they be? But at least gives you a nice data point and a window in, a vibe data point. And I hope you feel that it's relevant to the program at large beyond just that specific person. Okay, but let's get to your specific episode. Okay, so with this specific episode with Michael McElroy, it is our second episode with Michael, and also the second time that we have to tell you that he is now gone from the program. After moving on from Michigan, he's now moved on again as of June of 2025 and is back at NYU. By the time you're listening to this, who knows? Like I've said many times, you blink and the landscape shifts. But I do think this episode is still very helpful to listen to in order to get to know Howard as a program. And also, as we said in the other episodes, to hear Michael's perspective as just a two-time guest and influential voice in this academic world across many colleges. So I hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome to Mapping the College Audition, a podcast where we explore the landscape of the college theater world and try to demystify this daunting audition process. I am your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA, that's Musical Theater College Auditions, and today we have got Michael McElroy from Howard University on the show for you. Michael is our first returning champion of a guest, at least from a school perspective and someone I'm not married to. But we're really excited to have him represent Howard University on the podcast. Michael is a great example of someone going from one prestigious university to another. When we last had him on, he was the chair of the musical theater program at Michigan, but far from our only example of professors moving around. We know this too well. Many of our great episodes from the past few years have seen program heads shift, faculty change schools, people leave academia altogether, etc. It is a constantly evolving landscape that we are continuing to try to capture like water in a sieve. So we will try our best, which is just to say we absolutely will have people back on and programs represented once again for those that have shifted. It's always a balance for us of having new programs represented versus going back to ones where the information will likely be pretty similar, but maybe with slightly a different perspective with a new head. But just to say, it's something we're conscious of in planning our guests, and we absolutely will be having those schools back on the podcast with new heads in place. Here, of course, we got the best of both worlds with a guest we love and a new great program represented. I'm going to do a few quick reminders of some MTCA events before we hit some Thanksgiving gratitude. For any of our class of 2025 and younger students, our junior weekend is happening this December 2nd and 3rd online and in New York City, which is a great way to start with us as an MTCA student. It's a song, monologue, dance class, as well as an information meeting. It's really a great time. We only have a few spots left in that, so grab one of those if you're available. And for my class of 2024 seniors, our mocks are disappearing fast. We just had a great online mock last weekend. We have this December 3rd in New York City, which is full. We have December 10th in San Diego, which only has a very few spots left. And then the last mock of the year, which is January 6th, which will sell out, and it'll sell out before you think it will. And after that, that's it. It's your prime audition season. So please jump into one of those if you haven't done so yet. Y'all, am I the only one that Thanksgiving snuck up on this year? It was like Halloween, I took a nap, and here we are. I hope you are all listening to this cozily ensconced in some wonderful Thanksgiving plans. Of all the holiday traditions, I am a big fan of listing things we are grateful for. I love a New Year's resolution, and I love some Thanksgiving gratitude. It's really hard in a stressful year, which I think in this process is always a personally stressful year for a lot of our students and families. You know, we're in a really difficult time geopolitically, all the thousand natural shocks that our flesh is heir to, right? But it's really hard in those moments to sit down and focus on the things we have. But oh man, is that perspective healthy and happy making for us all. You know, I feel personally like I am objectively blessed. I have an amazing wife. I have a healthy and happy daughter. I have a job I love. But that certainly doesn't make me immune from cynicism and from focusing on the things I lack all too often. So I say to you this Thanksgiving year, give yourself a gift of a gratitude practice, not just during Thanksgiving, but beyond. And if you're like me, at least count your blessings once a year at this time. And one of those blessings, of course, is to be twice graced by the great Michael McElroy from Howard University. Well, we are so excited to welcome back Michael McElroy. Michael has a BFA from Carnegie Mellon University, been on Broadway in Sunday in the Park with George, Next to Normal, Rent, The Wild Party, Big River, for which he got a Tony nom and Drama Desk nom, and enough more Broadway shows that unbelievably we're not going to read them all. He founded the Broadway Gospel Choir in 1994 and Broadway Inspirational Voices in 1999. Previously, he's been an associate arts professor and head of vocal performance at the new studio on Broadway, at Tisch/NYU. He was also the chair of the Department of Musical Theater at the University of Michigan when we interviewed him last. And he is currently the coordinator of the musical theater program in the Chadwick A. Boseman College of Fine Arts at Howard University, which is located in Washington, D.C., and they take classes of about 20 to 22, offer a BFA in theater arts, and we'll talk about the different concentrations of musical theater, dance, acting, etc. Michael, welcome back on the pod. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm always happy to spend time with you also. Thanks for having me back, Charlie.
I'm honored and thrilled. Often my first question is to give us a little backstory, a little bio. I'm going to kind of assume that basically all of our listeners, many of them, will have heard your previous episode, so they're going to get to know you a little bit already and heard your personal background. I'd love to hear just a little bit about your journey since we chatted. So what made the journey from Michigan to Howard? Why the jump?
I look at every moment in my journey as being something that is predestined, and that as long as I have done the work fully in the present moment, not thinking about the future, then I'm ready when the next moment comes to me. Part of that is just my upbringing. I'm a church kid. I'm a preacher's kid. But I started, as an actor, as you said, and then this opportunity came to teach. I never in a million years thought I wanted to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher, but this opportunity to help create this musical theater program at NYU, the new studio on Broadway, turned out to be an incredible opportunity for me to hone my skills as a teacher, and specifically acting through song, vocal performance. And I got to do it with this incredible group of artists who were teachers, but also still very much still working
Mm-hmm.
in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
With Kent Gash, who was our head of our program, and Byron Easley and Del Howlett and Dawn Elin Fraser and Orlando Paboy, and also in this group of artists of color, where we were actually building something
Mm-hmm.
from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
So we were figuring out what the pedagogical practice, what the curriculum, who were the faculty going to be, what was going to be the trajectory from first year to fourth year. And so I got to do that in such a nurturing space in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
while I also got to continue to work as an artist. And then COVID happened,
Mm-hmm.
and we all brilliantly um, took an art form that depends on it is dependent on interpersonal connection,
Mm-hmm.
energy, all of those things, and we put it online
Mm-hmm.
basically, and made that shift. And during that time, the offer came from University of Michigan, and I said yes, and stepped into a position as chair,
Yep.
um, which was a totally different experience.
Yep.
And in that space, I learned what it was like to chair a program.
And the difference is what? It's more administration. It's more less creative, artistic control.
Well, in my first year, it was all administration, which was
Mm-hmm.
wise because it gave me an opportunity to learn how everything worked. And then after that, the second year, I started to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught a couple different courses. I taught the sophomores and I taught the seniors. I co-taught those courses. And then Howard came along.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an opportunity to take what I had learned in both of those spaces and to bring it to a space that really sits at the epicenter of who I am as an artist right now
Mm-hmm.
and how I want to give back to my community, but also to the art form. And so I get to do that here in this what they call the Mecca, that's
Mm-hmm.
what they call Howard. And from the minute I walked onto the campus, I felt like I had come home.
So cool. And sounds like a blending of different experiences with, the new of new studio, what's happening at Michigan with that very established program, trying to steer that ship. And then just love to hear about like what your mission is now. If you're going to say in my 5-year plan or what is the goal in terms of your coordination at Howard?
Well, I don't know how. I'm sure you do because you always do your research. The College of Fine Arts was just reinstituted 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and reinstituted under the name of Chadwick A. Boseman College of Fine Arts, in memory and dedication and honoring Chadwick Boseman, who was a student here, a graduate of this university. And so, under the leadership of Dean Felicia Rashad,
Mm-hmm.
they've spent the last 2 years rebuilding the College of Fine Arts as its own entity, as its own college.
Mm-hmm.
So I have stepped in the third year of its iteration as a College of Fine Arts again. And it's such an exciting time because it's still in a formation space, and we get to dream about and still build what we want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, uh, these last few years uh, have changed me, and like all of us, in many ways. I think one of the things that COVID did for us as human beings, it has made us really question what we do
Mm-hmm.
and what we want to do, right? You know, we saw how easily things could shift. And so for me as an artist, as an academic, as a person in that teaches, that mentors, that also continues to be a perpetual student, um, the question became, where can I be of service in the way that
Mm-hmm.
really centers what I believe in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And in this moment, for me, to be at this university that has been a leader in creating, fostering, developing, mentoring African American thinkers, scholars,
Mm-hmm.
artists to go out into whatever field they're going out into to be change makers
Mm-hmm.
and innovators sits at the epicenter of what I want to do with my life as it exists moving
Yep.
forward. Um, just like when I left BIV after 27 years, I think it was 27 years, one of the things I said to the board was, more of my life is behind me than is in front of me.
Uh-huh.
So what I want to do in this moment is be quite intentional about
Uh-huh.
where and how I spend my time and how I give back.
Yep. I'd love to kind of zero in on what the sort of vision of a Howard University, especially musical theater major is. But can we start a little bit broader, because Howard is our first HBCU that's been on the podcast, historically Black college university, and just talk a little bit about what that means, what it means to attend an HBCU, maybe what some of the advantages and disadvantages, especially as a student, as you see, of attending an HBCU, and then maybe we can zero in on the theater arts program, and then especially the musical theater program that you're coordinating.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I don't see any disadvantages in this. I think in this moment, what I've been able to learn in this moment of being in multiple artistic spaces, as you
Hmm.
said, coming from Carnegie Mellon, teaching at NYU, building a program there, going to University of Michigan. These are all like top musical theater programs.
Hmm.
Um, what I see and understand from students, particularly what I'm starting to learn and understand from students of color, particularly African American students, is there are a couple questions that I started to see or tease out that are at the forefront of how they make their decisions in terms of programs. And one of those was, the financial, of course,
Hmm.
which is on every family's mind, but then also more so, I think, in these past few years since COVID and all the things that have happened in our country, is where will I be safe? And safe does not mean in terms of the work.
Hmm.
It means in terms of the environment. And that environment can be the program, that environment can be the college or institution, and that can also mean the city where the university is. And so, what I have found for me as an artist and as a person who teaches in academia, that sense of safety, of that ability to bring one's full self into a
Hmm.
space and know that there is a space that was actually created to fully accept all of who you are and to shape that and to challenge you to go deeper and to expand wider.
Hmm.
Um, that's what I think an HBCU offers in this moment.
Hmm.
And one of the reasons why it was important for me to be here
Yep.
is because I want to be a part of helping specifically African American artists to step into the fullness of who they are in a space that was literally created
Yep.
for their success.
And can we talk about the specifics of, so what does qualify a student to attend an HBCU? So what will the complexion of a class look like at an HBCU, if you're attending one?
Well, I can only speak for this space. There is diversity here.
Hmm.
There is no mandate that says that you cannot attend here if you're not an African American, the African diaspora. Um, but I'd say most of the student population is African American.
Most being 90%. Like what are we, in terms of, if we had to sort of guess, I'm not asking you to put that down on a 92.3, but does it feel like it is nearly 100 or
I think it's above 90%.
above 90? Yep.
Yeah.
You mentioned already the re-endowment, if I'm using that word correctly, of the Chadwick A. Boseman College of Fine Arts. Let's talk a little bit about, what sort of distinguishes Howard as a theater school, and then maybe especially if we talk about the musical theater, what you're trying to do with it. What do you see when you meet these students? How do you find they distinguish themselves different than the students at NYU or the students at Michigan or the students at Carnegie Mellon?
Well, I don't think that the students are different. I think that this generation is a very particular generation. I think they're all a manifestation of how they've grown up and how they've been
Hmm.
socialized. The only difference I see is here coming into an environment that was fully developed and mined and um, created for them to bring the totality of who they are into the
Hmm.
space. So often, you know, as a person of color in academic spaces, you are navigating how to bring yourself in the room and at least find a way to get what you need, at most to be safe,
Hmm.
right? And to take that off of the table and say, you don't have to think about that,
Hmm.
right? To be able to walk across a campus and see, like my very first day here was incredibly emotional for me because I'd never been in an academic space where most of the people that I saw, whether that's faculty, student,
Mm-hmm.
admin, staff look like me.
Mm-hmm.
I never had that academic experience. And it was such an exhale.
Mm-hmm.
And that is specifically speaking to where I am in my own personal journey based on the experiences that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it is quite a gift to have a space that allows these students of the African diaspora to be able to come into a space and say, okay, you don't have to worry about that thing,
Mm-hmm.
but you do have to worry, not worry about, but be fully engaged in what it means to be fully an artist and a scholar,
Mm-hmm.
and to be challenged to be the strongest, deepest, best version of yourself, to
Yep.
learn the tools to engage your work, um, to grow as a human being in a community that is solely focused on your success, the entirety of you as a
Yep.
successful artist, in whatever way that means, with some of the most brilliant pedagogues and teachers. I mean, I'm in awe
Mm-hmm.
when I go through and look at some of the bios of the faculty that are here, who are legends and leaders in their fields.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's kind of been under the radar that you don't hear about, our musical theater program like you hear about some of the others.
Yep.
Well, I'm hoping to change that. I'm hoping that by being here as we are rebuilding and reforming, it's such an exciting time. I get
Yep.
to be a part of that, bringing all of the knowledge that I had gained as an actor for over 30 years, as a composer, and as a teacher and academic
Mm-hmm.
in multiple institutions.
Well, my money is on you changing that. I think we're going to be talking about 5 years and go. It has changed. That has happened. Well, it's so interesting hearing the sort of conversations about safety, because I think especially in COVID, we had a lot of conversations about safe spaces versus brave spaces, and how can you be brave. We all know as theater makers that in the educational aspects of this work, it takes a certain bravery, and you cannot have bravery without safety. So in some
Right.
ways, you're sort of saying like that safety is like already a given now in some
Yeah.
ways, that specific kind of safety, which
Yes.
maybe does allow a different kind of bravery in your work to go, I don't have to be protecting myself in that way.
Right.
I can be
Right.
brave. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
You're exactly right, Charlie. And it's the idea that what does it mean when you look across the room and see yourself reflected,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean in terms of that level of safety,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's still the human interaction, and we're all human beings with all of the things that come with
Yep.
that. But I have found that it is incredibly powerful. And I think back on my own journey and understand that when I saw faculty members who looked like me, that was one of the strongest ways of me knowing that I could bring my full self into the
Mm-hmm.
space.
I love it. And let's talk a little bit about the curriculum now. So you've worked at now an NYU, which is a very academic for a musical theater curriculum. You've
Mhm.
trained at a Carnegie Mellon, which is a very acting-based curriculum, even for the musical theater majors. You've now chaired a Michigan musical theater department, which is a really strong music component to it. I just love to hear, like, of the three disciplines, is there a focus that Howard has, or that you're going to be pulling out in different ways? How do you sort of approach the music, the acting, or the singing, the acting, and the dancing as you sort of shape the program?
Well, it's interesting. I think we kind of tell on ourselves, Charlie, because you're a generation after me, maybe a few generations after me, but all of those programs have changed.
Mm-hmm.
They're no longer just conservatory. When I was at Carnegie, I think I took maybe 3 academic classes
Mm-hmm.
in my 4 years, and they were all in my first year.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't exist anymore. To get into these programs now, your scores as a student have to be just as strong as your acting, music, dance scores, right? So what we're all saying is we are wanting to train the totality of an artist,
Mm-hmm.
and people say as the artist as scholar, right? And also the reality is, Charlie, no one wants to work with an actor who's not smart.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So um, that has all shifted, I think, in all musical theater or any kind of acting training programs. You've got to have the academics to go with the art. And so here, what I am focused on as I get to know the curriculum and the faculty and the students, number one, the biggest rule is always to listen. So my first year as I'm teaching is really about looking, listening, asking questions, getting in there and just being a part of, while thinking forward of what are some of the changes that I think I can help and offer to keep moving towards really strengthening and solidifying our mission as
Hmm.
a training program. And so, for me, it's always about the synthesis of acting, singing, and dancing, right? To me, you have to be an actor first, you have to be synthesizing those things as soon as
Hmm.
possible. Right? At the same time, we're also challenging our students to say, okay, just as we're saying, okay, what are you learning in that dance class? How does it relate to your acting? How does it relate to your singing? We're also saying, okay, what you're learning in that biochemistry class, how does that relate to here? And that, so that you're looking at things in a holistic way.
Hmm.
When students are going from high school into college, or there is that thing that we have to kind of shed that idea of, okay, this class is this class, how do I get the A here, this
Uh-huh.
class, but really start to think holistically,
Yep.
right? And that everything contributes to the artist as a human being,
Yep.
as an observer and a person who is deeply interacting with the world. And so you really encouraging and supporting students, not separating,
Yep.
but really starting to look at everything in a holistic way. So that's what I think of when I'm talking about rebuilding or moving the curriculum forward.
Yep. Well, and we talk about sort of holistic within the musical theater of it all. When we talk about actors versus musical theater, something a point I always make is that we sort of make this distinction in the audition. Of course, am I auditioning for musical theater? Am I auditioning for acting? But of course, as soon as you come out into the world, it's like, can you sing? Great, you can be in a Broadway musical. Can you dance? Like, that it's more about the literal skill set as opposed to the bifurcation. How does that work at Howard in terms of, is there interaction between the acting and the musical theater programs? How, if I was an actor and I wanted to be in the acting program, can I take music classes? Can I take dance classes? How does that interaction work for those students?
Good question. I know in terms of performance, all students can audition for all shows.
And in the theater arts program in general, you audition for the whole thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
students across the campus can also audition.
Hmm.
We just did a production of a hip hop play called Rhyme Deferred. It's the 50th year of hip hop. And
Hmm.
Rhyme Deferred was actually written here by Camilla Forbes, who now is the artistic director at the Apollo Theater. But she was a student here. And she wrote this hip hop play with Chadwick Boseman when he was a student. Hip hop theater was actually created here. And this is one of the plays that they did here. And that was students who were musical theater students, acting students who are not in those programs. It really can be anyone who can
Hmm.
audition for the programs. So for the shows. And
Hmm.
then for classes, there's not, as far as I can see so far, much of an integration acting and musical theater, but there are within each discipline opportunities to take
Hmm.
classes. Like as an actor, you can take movement classes, you can take a dance class, those kinds of things as well.
And I guess same question for musical theater in terms of the leveling of the dance. How does that work in terms of can I jump to a dance specific major class if I'm really more advanced? How does that work in terms of the different levels of musical theater dancers?
I think well, we have assessments at the beginning of the semester to see where students go, but there's also the opportunity if you come in and you're a really strong dancer. We have a wonderful dance program here, and our faculty will work with you to figure out where's the best place for you to
Hmm.
go.
Hmm.
While you're still taking the training that's within our program as well. So students are have the ability to minor. They have the ability to take additional credits in ways that they want to take credits.
Hmm.
So, we've had students who will, what I've been able to glean so far, students can say, okay, this is something I'm really passionate about within the artistic field. So I'm going to take more classes here.
Uh-huh. Well, and you've set me up perfectly for, as you talk about Carnegie Mellon and us taking 3 classes throughout. I took like 7 classes, but yeah, it was very few non-acting classes while I was there. How does that work at Howard? If I wanted to minor in something that wasn't theater related, if I wanted to minor in psychology or, God forbid, double major, how does that work in terms of outside of the theater school? What opportunities do I have as a Howard student?
Well, each of us are advisors for a different year. And so this is going to be my first time I'm an advisor for the second years. And so they come with their schedule of what they want to take. And then I look at it to make sure that it aligns with what they have to take for the major.
Hmm.
And then they start to look at, okay, well, this is what I have to take. This is when I have to take it. Now, I also want to make sure I can get this minor in and start to build around their classes for their major. And so, I think we have lots of students who minor. Just like at Michigan, I had lots of students who minored in
Hmm.
psychology, or there was an entertainment minor that students would take. As I think at any institution today,
Hmm.
which is very different from your years and my years, there is a much more of a push in terms of making sure that you are getting a holistic experience in the academic setting. Therefore, minoring in something that's outside of out of your focus is encouraged.
Hmm. Let's talk a little bit about how do you prepare students for the launch into the business itself. So I know this is now. It sounds like the from the re-endowment. It's now the third year will be the new school itself in terms of how they're launching into the business. But what is the plan in terms of stuff like showcase, stuff like how they're going to interact with agents and managers, all that kind of stuff.
We have a showcase that happens for our seniors in New York. And that will happen at the end of the spring, at the end of next year, and will happen there every year after. And we have one that they do here that we film,
Hmm.
so that is a digital form that can go out into the industry, and there's also the in-person live event that will happen. And we do our showcase in collaboration with the arts, with the actors.
Hmm.
So the actors and the musical theater do their showcase together.
Altogether. Yep. Well, and I'd love to talk about the complexion of your class in terms of mentioned the Mecca. So, how many of your students come from the sort of Mecca area, if that makes sense? Come from the greater DC area in all those different states, versus how many come from across the country? How many come from around the world? And then I'd love to also talk a little bit about where they end up. How many go to New York? How many LA? Do people go to Atlanta? Do people go in different
Yeah.
directions?
They call it, which, when I always saw the DMV as the motor vehicles. But
Hmm.
here in DC, the DMV is this tri-city, what we call tri-state area
Yep.
of New York, which
Yep.
is Maryland, DC, and Virginia.
Hmm.
So I think there's a sizable population that comes from the DMV.
Hmm.
And then we have students from, places like Atlanta, uh, Houston, Dallas area, Fort
Hmm.
Worth area. And then we have some kids from the West Coast, from the Bay Area, from LA. And then we have our Midwest kids. I have a student that's from Wisconsin. They come from everywhere.
Hmm.
And then we do have some students who are international.
Hmm.
So it just depends on that year and who applies,
Hmm.
and who gets in to make up that cohort. But we also have programs within our department where students get to travel abroad over the summer and study. We have one called BADA that's in London, and
Hmm.
then there's one that's in LA that students can do as well. There's one that's potentially happening in Ghana. So, we are, Howard as a university is a global institution.
Hmm.
And so now we are mandated, as we are looking at our mission as a department, to make sure that we are looking and thinking globally as well. So making sure that we're providing opportunities for our students, not only to go everywhere to study and
Hmm.
bring that back with them, but for other students from other nations to be able to come and study here.
And then what about the second half of that? Do you have a sense of where students end up from Howard, or are some of them staying in the DC area? I mean, there's a great theater scene there. Do some go to New York? Where do people seem to end up?
A lot of them go to New York. A lot go like to Atlanta,
Hmm.
and some go to the West Coast.
Hmm.
So we have them in Chicago.
Hmm.
That's what I'm hearing so far. But I'd say a bulk of them go to New York.
Yep, makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about cost. So, not a cheap school from the sticker price.
Mhm.
What I found was undergrad on campus was 55,704.
Right. But compared to,
Well, compared to some other schools that are even higher, I know. But I'd love to talk about the Chadwick A. Boseman Memorial Scholarship. So how does that work in terms of, what would most students expect to pay? If we talk about from a need perspective, we talk about a merit, whether that's talent or academic money. How do the sort of finances end up for most students in terms of what they're paying?
yeah, I think, for some students, it's like it is on a national scale with the Pell Grants. What federal funds do you
Yep.
get? And then what are the scholarships or grant monies that come from the university? And all of that is done by our admissions department. So I can get back
Yep.
to you on the specifics of that. But I know that we are working, and one of the things that I'm very passionate about is making sure that there is an endowment and also grant monies here specifically for musical theater
Hmm.
students so that we can, so there are no deterrents for students coming here.
Hmm.
Um, but that's just me speaking on in terms of my vision for
Yep.
things, because I know, and having been in multiple institutions, I know and have experienced how the admissions process and the offer process works.
Yep.
So I want to make sure that we are competitive here as well.
I love it. Is there any sort of best kept secrets about your school? I know you sort of mentioned the you're hoping it won't be such a secret; it'll be less and less of a secret over the course of the next couple of years, and with your leadership. But what's something that maybe if Howard wasn't on the map, what's something that they've been doing for a while that you go, this is more people should know about this. More people should know about what's been happening here.
Well, I mean, I'll just give you an example of this the last couple of weeks. 2 Mondays ago, we had Misty Copeland here. She has produced and stars in a documentary that she created about the homeless crisis in outside of Oakland, and we had the movie premiere here,
Hmm.
shown here, and she was here. And it was an evening to show the film, then also to speak with our students. We had a reception beforehand where she could interact with some of our students, specifically from the dance program as well. Then 3 days later, the August Wilson Society was here doing an event that our dean co-hosted. And then this past Sunday, we had a Hattie McDaniel uh, day evening where a copy of her Academy Award was returned here to the university and now sits in the hallway in a case. And her descendants were here to talk about her life and her experience. So there's all these incredible things that are always happening
Hmm.
here that unless you are actively, connected to Howard, you may not know about. And I also want to make sure that we're starting to get that word out so people can
Yep.
start to know about these wonderful things, because that's also a part of the experience here.
Yep.
A part of the experience is not just the training, not just the education, but it's also about how we are connecting to legacy, how we're
Hmm.
connecting to what came before, and how we are also inspiring for what's to come.
Hmm.
And so, having these different artists who are coming here to talk about their work, having these things that have to do with generations past that are coming here, it's just such an exciting time.
Hmm.
And then also the other thing is the social aspect of being at an HBCU.
Hmm.
My first day here, I was looking out my window onto the quad, and there was, the marching band,
Hmm.
and then a few minutes later, there were all these different fraternities and sororities doing a step show. I mean,
Hmm.
it's like there is a social community aspect that's cultural that you won't find in other institutions, that you'll find in HBCUs, that I think is really exciting
Hmm.
about what it means to go here.
So well said. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and on the back end, we'll chat a little bit about the audition process. So, back in a flash. All right, we are back with Michael McElroy from Howard University, and we're going to chat a little about the audition and admission process.
Yes.
So, I'd just love to chat through the audition and admission process in terms of, first off, just what you're looking for when you look at auditions for musical theater students. So, what is a good musical theater audition for you?
Um, that's a great question. I don't think that changes no matter. It doesn't change whether I'm at NYU, Michigan, or
Yep.
here. I'm looking for talent and potential,
Yep.
right? We learn so much about a young artist by the material they choose and how they engage that material.
Hmm.
Because we're in this, early decision, early action video world where you submit all these videos. Every opportunity that of what you submit is an opportunity for us to get to know who you are, right? So the music you choose, how you engage that material, We've now instituted in our early decision, early action, and moving forward in all the submissions that we do online, a wild card of you can either answer one of two questions, or you can do something that's not included in the mandatory
Mm-hmm.
video submissions. That's an opportunity for us to get to know you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I encourage students to pick material that they're passionate about, that shows what they can do, not what they cannot,
Mm-hmm.
right? That they know, for example, when they slate, that they know who wrote the material that they're
Uh-huh.
um, going to share, and that they pronounce their names correctly, right? Little things like that. Um, and then, well, like I said, I'm not looking for a finished product. I'm
Right.
looking for someone that when I see them, there's a spark there, there's talent there that
Yep.
can be developed, that could be really super raw,
Yep.
but it's there. Um, and I'm looking for potential, meaning there's potential for growth.
Yep.
And I'm looking for someone I'm going, will I be of service to that student when they
Yep.
come?
And how does it work with the different, platforms? So especially you mentioned those videos, so people are uploading videos, and
Yes,
then there are callback auditions.
yes.
Is the video for you a check for talent and then the callback is a deeper dive? Do you come back to the video at the end? How does that work in terms of sort of the way that you're viewing that video submission along with the application and then the callback audition itself?
Well, this is my first time going through the process here, but I can tell you what I've always done is the first viewing is for that. Is this there's what I think needs to be here to call that person
Mm-hmm.
back to come in person,
Mm-hmm.
and then the call back in person is about, does this fulfill what I thought it did, or does it take me somewhere even that I didn't even see?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Um, and I think it's wonderful. We live in a time where there are lots of support systems around helping students to prepare for college, and specifically around musical theater auditions. But when I see you in person, I always give a note. I
Mm-hmm.
always give an adjustment. I want to see if a student can take a note and not do what they've already been doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or is it so, baked in that they can't, and it usually is something that's kind of out there that makes
Yep.
no sense, because I
Yep.
want to see, can this young artist say yes? Can
Yes.
they play? Right?
Yes.
And then once we've had that, then yes, I will sometimes go back and look at the videos just to see what my assessment is, and
Uh-huh.
if I'm still having questions about something, or
Yep.
but we spend a lot of time, because we understand for these students, they put a lot of time and effort into their work. We
Yep.
want to make sure that we respect that on our end,
Yep.
in every way possible. So, I do spend a lot of time going back and forth.
I love that you said that. Your timing is perfect for. We just did a mock audition where I was trying to underline that exact point for our students. Where I had asked like a group of them, like, "What's the worst thing that could happen if you get an adjustment?" And someone raised their hand. They're like, "It could be really, really bad." And I was like, "That is far from the worst thing that could happen.
Oh, I
It is
love
so
it.
much worse if you did it the same. Like, I would so much rather you go and be terrible, and then it's like that's on me. I gave you that crazy adjustment, as opposed to like if you just do it the exact same. Now I start wondering, are you overly coached? Are you stuck? Is there no, are you not willing to play with me? So I'm going to underline and save what you just said and put it online and all the things.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about, do you look, and I know this is your first time going through this process. Do you look and or are planning on looking at any of the other parts of the application that aren't the wild card, that aren't the sort of theater arts part of it? Do you look at grades or SATs? I know SATs are optional for Howard, we found, but do you read the essays and stuff like that, letters of rec, anything else that you sort of take in from the application?
Yeah, we have all of those things. And I think that once again, when you're looking at the totality of, if you're saying you're looking to train the whole artist, then you need to look at all those things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we do. We are in partnership with the admissions office, right? But I think in my past experiences and what I've seen thus far, we have access to a lot of information, and we make sure that we do our due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
Because once again, we want to look at all of it to understand, is this a space where this young person can thrive?
Mm-hmm. And then as you think about filling out your class, so often when we use the word diversity, we're trying to say beyond just racial diversity.
Yeah.
But, when you're considering diversity of height and of gender balance and size and, maybe specifics of racial diversity within, the diaspora you mentioned, how do you think of that? I mean, are you thinking of, Do you have specific quotas of we want to be about even male and female identifying? How do you think about the way you fill out the class of your individual artists?
Well, this is my first time, so I don't know how it will be, but I do know that I would like there to be some form of or closeness to balance in terms of how students identify,
Hmm.
male identifying, female identifying students. Um, so that because that affects the kind of material we can do in class, what
Hmm.
kind of material we can then do on stage, et cetera, et cetera. But other than that, it's a far step away from the day like our day of I want the blonde, I want the this, I
Hmm.
want that, right? I'm interested in artists, young artists who are passionate and who have are curious. In addition to have talent and potential, I want you to be curious.
Hmm.
Who bring joy in the room, who are thinkers,
Hmm.
don't you'd be surprised how much you can find out in the moment of in-person auditions about is this a student who's going to go there, who's going to risk,
Hmm.
who doesn't mind failing, who doesn't mind but is going to be joyful in the space. All of those things contribute to creating a cohort of artists. I'm really more interested in building a cohort of artists that are going to challenge each other, support each other, and that's always a luck of the draw.
Hmm.
But if you can tease out in those audition moments certain qualities that you look at and kind of send off kind of bells for you. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? There's certain things we're energy people, right? We're energy beings. So just kind of getting a second sense of when I'm working with a young artist in an audition situation, paying attention to my gut instincts about things.
Hmm.
Because ultimately, I want them to thrive.
And is there something that you are sniffing for in terms of, of going, I think you would particularly thrive at an HBCU? Does that, I know it's about the first time you're going to go through this process, but is that something you're looking for as you say, hey, I think this kind of student either would be especially good for us or maybe wouldn't fit as well for us in terms of like the interview? Or is there anything you're sort of checking to go, I think this would be a really great home for you?
I think most students of the African diaspora, this would be a good space for.
Hmm.
Sometimes they don't know that because they've never been in spaces. Sometimes they haven't been in spaces
Right.
where they've been not been the one or two or three or four. So I think any student of the African diaspora, I think, would thrive here. So there's not a student of that of like I said, of the African diaspora, who I think would not.
Right.
There's no one I would go, oh, you wouldn't do well. I mean, there may be multiple spaces where they could thrive.
But and I guess I wonder, if you're a non-Black listener, are there students where you go, well, because of your background, because of your history, this actually might be a great fit for you, or someone where you go, I'm not sure that it would be as good of a fit for you. You might not thrive as well here.
Yeah, I don't think that once again, this is the first time I'm going through it, so I don't. But there's no like denying anyone based
Right.
on race. I know that's for sure. And as I said, there is some diversity here.
Yep.
Um, so once again, it's about instinct and really about the brief in terms of what are the things, the benchmarks, the things that we are looking for,
Hmm.
which are very clearly delineated for us. And then me as an artist and as a teacher going, okay, what am I getting in this moment? And do I think that this is a good fit? Race doesn't play into that ever.
Totally. Let's do some bonus questions because I know we also want to talk a little bit about Young Arts. I know you sit on the board of this really awesome scholarship opportunity. This is a competition that we recommend to all of our students. We just chatted about in our most recent webinar on scholarship opportunities. But can you talk about some of the rewards of it, both financial and then some of the non-financial rewards as well?
Great. I'm actually a Young Arts alum. I
Mm-hmm.
was actually in the second year of its existence back in the 80s. And I'm a living testament to the fact that once you are a part of that family, you remain a part of that family.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you said, right now I serve on the board of Young Arts, but there are many different ways in which it can really be something phenomenal in a young artist's life. For me, coming from suburb in Shaker Heights, Ohio, it was the first time that someone outside of my world said that I had talent, that I had
Mm-hmm.
something, and they wanted to celebrate it and foster it and support it. If you apply in one of the 10 disciplines. And you are there are three different tiers, I guess you could say. You could be chosen as a finalist.
Mm-hmm.
If you're chosen as a finalist, that means they fly you down to Miami in January. Who doesn't want to be in Miami in January? Where you are there for a week with 20 to 21 other young artists in high school in your discipline. And there is a performance aspect to that where you prepare a show, and then the rest of that time is spent in workshops, master
Mm-hmm.
classes with this cohort that you travel through that week with, also at the same time seeing all the other disciplines work every evening.
Mm-hmm.
From that, you can either be you can get a grant, or I mean a scholarship rather, from anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 to do with as you want. It does not
Mm-hmm.
have any restrictions on it. If you want to take that $10,000 and go take dance classes, you can do that.
If you want to go to Vegas, you can do that.
Right.
Wow,
Well,
we
we're not going
love.
to say that. Most of these students, they won't do that. They will use it either for college or they'll
Yeah.
use it for their art. Uh, but also, if you're not chosen as a finalist, you can also be chosen as an honorable mention or a merit finalist, which then means that you are eligible for all of the things as an alum of the program of
Mm-hmm.
the Young Arts family, which includes anywhere from being a part of the regional shows they do. They do regional shows in Miami, New York. Right now, I think we used to do them also in LA. And then also the grants.
Mm-hmm.
We are working to make sure that we are supporting our alums in having opportunities for collaborations with other arts organizations and arts
Mm-hmm.
institutions, um, uh, building spaces where they can come and create work and collaborate with other artists.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things, and it really is for life. And we're really looking at how we're supporting artists at the beginning of their career, which is really
Mm-hmm.
that post high school, college, out into the world, then at that midpoint in their career, and then also into the later years of their career as alums, because the needs are different.
Yep.
Because Young Arts really believes that the arts are an integral part of our world.
Yep.
And so making sure that we are celebrating and really finding how to support at those main kind of touch points in the young in an artist's career is really an integral part of how we're of our mission.
Well, we talk about it a lot with our artist guests of just like the value of community. And many people get that from their alumni networks of their schools. Great. But depending what school you go to and how robust that is, it cannot hurt to have more communities
No,
when you move to New York. As much support and communities you can have when
yes,
you're here is always helpful to people.
yeah,
I'd
yes.
love to dive in a little bit of like you mentioned the sort of post college world and so what young arts can do, but just in general, as an artist who has been so connected to the industry while still living in the educational world,
Mhm.
where do you see this industry going? Like, where do you see these kids? They're creating a whole new world. I mean, we're all trying to figure out what this industry is going to be post strike. We record this post writer strike, but still within the actors strike.
Yeah.
Where do we see, 4 years from now, these students graduating into?
Well, I think when the industry shut down, there was a lot of attention and work towards change. But we are creatures of habit. And once we were back up and running, there is a tendency to kind of go just get things back to business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this generation that's coming out now will be an absolute vital part of making sure that we're still moving things forward,
Mm-hmm.
and we're still creating spaces for diversity where all across all aspects of the fields within our industry, so that there are stories being told that represent the vast lived experiences of our country and of our world. And so I think what I always think about with my students is I want you to have the tools to be able to go out and meet the industry exactly where it is right now and do everything that is required of you. But I also want you to have the tools that you can be a change maker
Mm-hmm.
to make it into what we only can dream it can be. So you're
Mm-hmm.
not only having the tools for now, we also want to train you with the tools for 5 years from now,
Yep.
right? And this generation, they are activated in a different way.
Yep.
And if we can channel that activation towards, you know, grace in spaces, healing spaces, but also still advocating that things move forward,
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's going to transform our industry.
I mean, I think that second part is It has never been more necessary, just in terms of they're graduating to a world, an industry that doesn't fully know itself still. I mean,
Yeah,
that there's part of the old, there's some of the new, there's no cohesive, this is what we are, whether it's regional theater or film or, Broadway. So they're going to need a lot of that second part
yeah,
of things of creating the new and, of what 2027, I guess, for these students will look like. But,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Any final thoughts? I had you give advice last time, but if you want to give some advice to the parents out there who are listening, to the students who are going through this process, or any other final thoughts, if you're like, my advice last time was great, I got nothing new to say there, that's also
I
okay.
don't remember what I said last time, but I will say this. I think I probably said this. Uh, if you can, like we with our auditions, I think it's important that we are accessible to everyone. So in every
Mhm.
part of our audition process, there's a virtual component, meaning if you live out of the country or
Yep.
if you can't afford to get here, because we do want to acknowledge that finances are hard during this
Hmm.
college application season. We want to make sure that students who can't afford to get here or for other reasons can't get here, that there is a virtual component that they can
Hmm.
do of the audition process. But if you can, always try to go to that institution.
Hmm.
Always try to walk across that campus. I know for me, and I don't know if it was like for you, but the minute I got out of that car on, I think it was Forbes Avenue,
Yep.
and walked across what you probably don't know, Skibo and the old, it's
This whole
across the,
podcast is trying to figure out Charlie's age right now. You're trying to be like, was
no,
Skibo around? Was it this? Was it
I,
more wood yet? Yeah, I
I plead
understand.
the fifth. But when I walked across that campus, it felt right. And then
Uh-huh.
it only had to be proven or disproven when I walked into a class.
Uh-huh.
And when I walked into class, it was like, oh, wow. I sat there and went, yes, this is
Yep.
it.
Yep.
There's an energy that you feel when you walk across a campus that you know, or you can see yourself there.
Yep.
And not only see yourself there, but see yourself thriving there.
Yep.
Right. And so I always say, if you can go there, if you can't, at least see if you can talk to students who are in that first year's cohort
Yep.
so that you get a sense of it, not the party line, but a real sense of what that experience will be like for you. And ask a lot of questions.
Yep. And is that I mean, certainly advice we would always give in terms of before you would attend a university. Do you feel like for the audition portion, is that important to you that someone comes to campus and does it live? And I also didn't get to ask about, I know, I don't know if it's all nailed down yet in your first year of doing this, but do you have a sense of what regional auditions you might be? Are you going to be going to a unified alongside New York, Chicago, LA? I almost didn't want to ask you that just in case you didn't feel ready for it. But just in terms of how important is it that live experience to be on campus for you when auditioning versus if they auditioned somewhere else virtually or in one of these other opportunities and then came to the campus for you?
Well, we're doing two unifieds virtually this
Hmm.
year. I'm really starting to expand back out into that world. That's a part of what we want to continue to reestablish those connections. So we're starting with the virtual version of that. But students are never, um, it's never a negative that if they only do virtual,
Right.
right? I'm just saying, for me, one of the things that was so incredibly valuable to me when I was making this decision over
In
100 years
deciding to attend. Yeah.
was but I could do that because I was in Cleveland, two and a
Yeah.
half hours from Pittsburgh,
That's right.
right? That's not always possible.
Yeah.
But, you know, as I think I did say before, so often we get caught up in the idea of a place or what we're
Uh-huh.
told is the place. And every place that is the place may not be the place that's going to be right for you.
Yep.
So I say that keeping an open mind and really asking yourself the tough questions about what does it take for me really to be challenged
Yep.
and where can I thrive? That may be in a program in Oklahoma as opposed to New York City,
Hmm.
or that may be in Michigan, or it may be in Pittsburgh. But
Hmm.
to be honest about what's going to be best for you as opposed to where you think you're supposed to go because that is considered the best.
Hmm. So true. It's great advice. Anything else we want to say, and also where people can follow you? We have a website, of course. We found HU Fine Arts on
Mhm.
socials, if that's the right social to
Yeah.
tag, or if there's other places people should be following. How's the best way to get more information on you
Yes.
as things change?
To go to our website and then put in the theater arts.
Hmm.
But also, we're going to start, and it's part of my charge is to start really amping up our social media presence.
But see, now we've been talking talking about your age all day. So now, what are you talking about? Social media?
That's the generation, right?
This is not good. This is not. We can't be over 40 trying to do social media.
We'll embed it in an email for you.
Thank
We'll
you.
send
Good.
you an email and we'll embed a video in that.
I need an email. I need an email, maybe a text message. If it's on social media, I miss it completely. It doesn't. This is my wife now. When we were dating, I could not believe every business. I'd be like looking at their website to see what happens. She goes, "That's not where the information is. It's on their Instagram." It's like, are
Yep.
you kidding me? I got to go to the Instagram to see their hours of operation. Yeah,
Yep.
that's
There
where
it
things
is.
go now. It's
Welcome
crazy.
to the world. It's changing all around us, Charlie. And we either got to get in or get out.
It sure is. Well, until next year when we have you back on, it was great chatting with you, Michael. I really, really appreciate it.
All right. And thank you all for the wonderful work that you do.
Oh boy, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Michael, our first returning champion of a guest, and a smash hit, if I do say so myself. And I do. I say so myself. I have a few mini takeaways today. First, I want to make sure I addressed Michael's comment in which I believe he insinuated that I was old. How could he? About the nature of schools being more academic than they were in his day. I think it's a really great perspective for you to hear in terms of someone who attended a conservatory BFA program in Carnegie Mellon and then has worked at a number of excellent liberal arts style BFA programs like NYU, Michigan, now Howard. So certainly his experience at those programs suffuses that perspective. But I also think some of that generational part of the comment is really smart in the way that in Michael's time, they might have been viewing, acting as more of a craft or, maybe viewed as more of a technician back in the olden days, right? Acting is more almost a vocational training, and how that's really shifted across the landscape of the business. We now want informed, smart actors with perspectives on the world. That word multi-hyphenate has become so overused on this podcast and everywhere that I'm sure you're almost sick of it, but for good reason. That is reacting to what was for a long time the expectation, which is that you had no hyphens. You were expected to be an actor who was trained deeply on this technical craft, and that was your sole focus. And the idea of being a teacher or a director or a writer might mean you were taken less seriously, whereas now those hyphens only increase your marketability and your artistry to the world. But the reason I'm bringing this up is anytime I hear a general statement like that doesn't exist anymore, I just wouldn't want you to hear that as literally true. There certainly still are conservatory-style BFA programs where the focus is more on the artistic classes than the liberal arts classes, and where the GPA is not factored in as heavily in admissions, etc. While the holistic idea, I think, is really helpful, the specifics of how admission is factored in class curriculum, that still varies from school to school on that spectrum, which is part of the reason you listen to this podcast, to get all of that specific information from school to school. Changing topics, I just also want to quickly underline and kind of plus one on two things Michael started talking about. The first is just the way he talked about, can you take a note? We've talked about this a number of different times on the subject of adjustments and the kind of audition skills that go beyond the initial material. But I really like the way Michael phrased it. I thought another great perspective on hearing what goes beyond just the stuff that I bring in terms of that interaction that happens in the room. And lastly, I just want to underline the comments about safety. I think Michael put it really well. We've talked about this in a bit in some of sort of the risk-taking takeaways that we've done before. But I guess the part I want to underline in terms of my perspective is just how important safety is in order to be brave. I do think sometimes people get that a little twisted and think that you either need to feel safe or you need to put yourself in a place where you think you can take risks, which somehow is an unsafe place, right? And in general, I think you need the former to achieve the latter. You need safety in order to achieve bravery, right? Taking artistic risks in a place where you don't feel physically or psychologically safe can be really unhealthy. And on the other end of that spectrum, of course, you don't want to look for an artistic home that is so concerned with any potential lack of safety that it actually discourages risk-taking. But that sweet spot, the balances I think that most colleges are looking for, is to have a place with enough baseline safety and trust that I'm able to take a leap and really put myself out there vulnerably and grow. If I were to think my classmates are, secretly filming me to post a video online or to make fun of me later, that's just never going to be a classroom where it's possible for me to do my best artistic work. This is why many of you in your high school English classes may have experienced this. Your high school English class is probably not getting your best version of Romeo during the classroom reading of Romeo and Juliet, right? If you really go for it, you risk being deemed uncool. So maybe you're going to play it safe, or you're going to comment on the work with a funny British accent so you don't ever really have to show up and be vulnerable. And conversely, of course, if a professor is so afraid of possible offense or harm to me, the student, that they're never willing to give me any challenging material or push me in any way, that's not a place where I would personally find the most growth. But this idea of safety is why some students choose to go to school outside of New York City. Maybe they take all New York City schools out of their list because they feel it's going to be too real if they know a big agent or casting director could walk into their shows. Of course, that's conversely why some people are excited by those schools, and they'll feel like their work itself can't be safe. Also, you can talk about safety in the context of the conversation we had a few weeks back in our American University episode about geographical safety. If there's certain locations or environments where you're not going to feel safe and supported by your community, it's probably not the best place for you. But I think what Michael's talking about when he says safety is more of that psychological safety of being amongst a peer group that instantly understands you. And I think he put that really well in the episode. It's a privilege that I have had in almost every artistic room I've walked into as a white, straight, cis person. I may have been the minority gender in most of my dance classes, but I have rarely felt like I had to explain or speak for my identity in an artistic setting. And this is the gift that an HBCU can offer for interested students. Of course, Howard's gain can become another college's loss in losing that potential diverse perspective that might enrich the experience of those non-HBCUs. But for you, the individual artist, that's not your responsibility. For your college experience, you get to decide where do you learn the best, and in this case, where that balance of safety and bravery can be found. Well, that's it. Another episode of Mapping the College Audition. We are eternally grateful to Meghan Cordier for producing our show, as well as my wonderful assistant, Kelly Prendergast, who I don't believe I've yet shouted out on this podcast, but who helps book and prepare our interviews as well as our social media posts. Thank you to both of you wonderful ladies, both MTCA alums. Shout out. We could not do the show without you. Of course, I gotta say a big thank you to you, the listeners, for your time and attention. Of course, an extra thank you for those who took time to rate and review us on the podcast. We deeply appreciate that. But just your downloads and your listens themselves are deeply appreciated. Our audience has grown steadily each year we've done this podcast. And I know a big part of that comes from personal referrals from all of you. So thank you for that. And while we're thanking, should we thank our theme song composer, Will Reynolds, and our vocalist extraordinaire, Elizabeth Stanley? Sure, we might as well. The latter can never be thanked enough. You want more gratitude? Follow us at Mapping the College Audition on Instagram or MTCA at MT College Auditions on TikTok. Check us out on our website for more information about how we can help you with your individual college prep needs. And hopefully I'll see many of you at Junior Weekend on December 2nd and 3rd, or MTCA mock auditions this month in New York City or San Diego, or of course January 6th in New York City as well. To my young artists out there mapping their journeys, what Thanksgiving side are you most looking forward to eating, and why is it not yams? We'll see you next week.